Baggio, Benelli, Bugnini. These are some of the characters that you're going to hear spoken about in this interview. I won't be getting Baggio and Benelli mixed up again. Very interesting interview I have for you now with Father Charles Theodore Murr. He wrote the book Murder in the 33rd Degree. Lots of stuff there I never knew about. These are all figures and personalities in the church that had died long before my time. And it's very interesting to hear about the accounts from that period in history, in church history. So have a listen to this interview. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do buy the book, because in an interview you're only going to talk about a certain section. The book is fascinating. I have to say I had to go and finish it after the interview because I'd only managed to get to two-thirds of it. But it is a fascinating book. And let me know if you have any questions, if you'd like to hear more about this. What would you like to ask Father? Maybe we'll try and get him back and to clear up some stuff. But a fascinating interview. Great meeting Father Charles by Zoom. And he's really done great work for the church and leaving something that we can read about that period in the church. Anyway, God bless, take care, and enjoy the interview. So I'm joined this evening with a very interesting guest. It's Father Charles Theodore Murr, and he's called the Don for short. Is that right, Father?
That's right, Don
That's
Carlos.
Right. And I was looking at an interview that he did on 1 Peter 5 with Timothy Flanders, and I thought it was really interesting. So I got the book. I reached out to Father. I said, would you be interested in doing an interview for a small Irish blogger? And you very much obliged me on this. And I do recommend people, please support Father. Get the book. It's a very interesting read, riveting, I have to say. So I have some questions once I was reading this book.
Sure, tell me.
Yeah, and so the things I'm thinking of, because you've appeared in the documentary The Mass of the Ages, which is kind of providential. I had the book, and then lo and behold, you're there in The Mass of the Ages. I want to touch on two things that come up in this book: is Cardinal Benelli and Archbishop Bugnini. Because I think you've mentioned that the insinuation or the possibility that Benelli, who was in charge of nominating the bishops of the world, it could have some connections to Freemasonry. Is that a stretch of the imagination, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's not, but you've got the wrong name.
Oh, pardon.
Well, no, because Benelli was the Undersecretary of State under Paul VI. And the man that you're talking about is Baggio.
Baggio, sorry. Baggio.
Sebastian Baggio. Quite a difference between the two of them, and they were mortal enemies. They didn't like each other at all. But Benelli would forgive you. He was the nobler of the two. Okay. I don't know that Baggio would forgive you for that mistake.
Anyway, I got them mixed up. Baggio, Benelli, sorry for that. But
well, we've got three names here which are confusing. One is Bugnini.
Yeah.
The other one is Baggio, and the other one is Benelli.
Okay.
You've got the three B's. So it's a little bit confusing. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll try to make it less confusing.
Okay.
So your question
did Baggio, Cardinal Baggio, do you think, how much of a connection did he have to Freemasonry, and did he use that to influence those that he pushed forward as bishops in the church?
To answer the first part of that, a total connection to Freemasonry. He was a Freemason member, and not passive but active. Also, how did that influence? Let's just get this understood for your listening audience. Cardinal Sebastian Baggio was in charge of the Congregation for Bishops. What does that mean? It means that every bishop made in the world, throughout the world, was his name, that the candidate's name, had to go through Baggio's office. There's a whole process, so I won't get into that. However, Bajo was the one who decided yay or nay to a man's becoming a bishop. Now, when you have a Freemason who's in charge of creating the world's bishops, most of those bishops, there were exceptions to this, but most of the bishops that he named were out and out liberals, and just no question about it. Very much in accord with Masonic philosophy. What is that philosophy basically? It's modernism. If your listeners understand what modernism, it's that in a nutshell. It's Gnosticism. It is égalité, fraternité, liberté. That's what it is. Freemasons were behind the French Revolution. They were behind the American Revolution. They were behind the Mexican Civil War. They were in everything to make systems of governments liberal.
Yeah,
this is it. Akin to Marxists, and their techniques were dastardly. They were also the reason that the unification for Italy, two of the great men, Cavour and Mazzini, were Freemasons, right? Excommunicated both. One was reconciled on his deathbed. But this is what the Freemasonry is. Now, when you have a man in charge of creating the bishops of the world, and his philosophy is a Freemasonic philosophy, I put forth the possibility, the probability, I should say, of those men being out and out liberals, and they were, for the most part, they were. This is what happened in the early 70s, all through the 70s and 80s. Something else happened. In 1966, Pope Paul VI wrote I believe it was a motu proprio, saying that all bishops had to resign at age 75. Yeah. Well, this created an ocean of brand new bishops, of baby bishops, and Bajo was right there to fill all of those slots with men that he knew and men who were liberals. Our apostolic delegate at that time, he wasn't a nuncio. We didn't have nuncios when you have formal relations with a country in the Vatican. When you don't, you have an apostolic delegate. The delegate at that time that we had in the United States during the 60s and the beginning of the 70s was a man by the name of Jadot, Jean Jadot, a Belgian, only son of one of the wealthiest diamond miners in the world. Right? He was made our nuncio. I'm sure because of his capacity, his intellectual capacity and moral stability. Diamonds and the millions that he had nothing to do with it, I'm sure. But anyway, he was named nuncio to the United States. And when he resigned, he gave an interview to Time magazine.
Yes.
Very proud of the fact that he named 78 liberal bishops in the United States. We're well on the way to liberalizing the American church. He was very proud of this, and Rome was proud of it, and Bajo was happy with it. Everyone was happy. This was the direction that things took. All right. Yeah. And yeah, anyway, so I hope I explained that well enough. It's a little bit confusing, I think. Okay.
No. I'll certainly never confuse Benelli and Bajo again, that's for sure.
Oh, they wouldn't have it, either one of them.
I mean, we talk about this and people say, oh, this is conspiracy. But when, for example, we read the documents of Pope Francis, we do see quite plainly Freemasonic terminology. I mean, it's universal brotherhood. That's straight out of the playbook of Freemason. Everybody can be a Freemason. You can be, you don't have to, it's not, it's anybody of any religion can be. Égalité is said, liberty, freedom, all of the French Revolution.
Right.
I suppose this.
And Robert, you notice there's an awful lot of liberté, égalité, fraternité, and there's very little of Jesus Christ.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and unfortunately, the documents that I've been reading out of Rome recently have very little of Jesus Christ, and the Jesus Christ that I know, that I came to know and to love very much and to dedicate my life to. Very little of that. What's most important is ecology, the world, the earth, the this, the that, everything but Jesus Christ and the salvation of souls. I find that very disturbing, very
Yes.
disturbing.
Yes. I mean,
This is where we are.
yeah, I mean, and you will see this. We see it even more. There's a lot of people that have a great hunger for something profoundly spiritual, for profoundly challenging, and the church we have left in Ireland today oftentimes doesn't give that challenge to the next generation. It's afraid even to give us a few words in Latin at Mass. Oh no, why would you want that? Why would we challenge our children with anything? It has to be easy, and it has to be childlike and simplistic. Whereas now we see a generation, because we're not getting that from the church, they're looking for it elsewhere. They'll go and they'll go to societies, traditional movements, traditional bloggers, and so forth. I mean, it's the logical conclusion of this liberalism is the destruction of the faith, pure and simple.
I would add something to that observation, a perfect observation that you've just made. That's exactly right. But I would add one other factor to that I think is astounding. It's certainly remarkable. People should remark at it. That these people, that fellow Catholics, are looking for a deeper sense of religion, a deeper sense of relationship with God, a deeper sense of adoration, of worship, of transcendence of the vertical as opposed to the horizontal, okay? That they're doing that tremendously upsets these liberals. Isn't that amazing? I mean, they're absolutely beside themselves. They don't know what to do. Write new documents, make new condemnations. If you would just, I just go through my mind's eye of the crazy. I've walked out of masses before I was a priest. I've walked out because I thought they were sacrilegious, and I'm not an old fogey. Well, I was never a young fogey either. I'll tolerate an awful lot of whatever, but some of them were absolutely sacrilegious. They were blasphemous. Those are tolerated. There's no problem with any of those. Just the Latin Mass. Now, that should tell you an awful lot. As a matter of fact, my respect for the Latin Mass has grown substantially.
Yeah.
Once I found out how deeply it upset these people, the liberals. I said, there's got to be something to this. And there is something to it. And I'm discovering more and more the beauty of the Latin Mass. And so are thousands of people. And you know this, you're not surprised, by young people and young families. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful. But this bothers the liberals tremendously. They cannot tolerate it. You have to tolerate all of the nonsense, clown masses and people doing somersaults and running around and jumping up and down. And you have to tolerate that. But they cannot tolerate the Mass of the ages, the Mass that sustained saints and scholars for years. The Mass, let me just speak particularly to Ireland and to you, my good men. The Mass that got Ireland through from the beginning to the end of the persecution, the great persecution that it underwent with you know who. We won't mention them. Yeah. But it was this Mass. It was this Mass that people clung to, and it saved them. This is the enemy today. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Something very wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
and you know, Robert, one other thing too, before I forget it, and then you can shut me up. All right, now I'll let you talk. But one thing that you mentioned that's very important. People, when you talk to people about Freemasons, about a complot, a plotting, a plot of a Freemasonic plot, and this and the other thing. a lot of people will just slough that off as conspiracy theories, and it's nonsense. Let me just remind those people that what we're talking about here concretely happened concretely with the Vatican bank scandal in the early 1980s and all the way through. People committed suicide, people were murdered, and people were imprisoned in federal prison. They're still alive today for the federal crime of a Freemasonic plot against the Vatican finances. It says Freemasonic plot. These are not, this is the official verdict, the reason that these men are in prison, right? Yes. Not because they did bad things. No. A Freemasonic plot against the Roman Catholic Church, and particularly against the Vatican. They wanted to crumble and destroy its finances completely. So these are not conspiracy theories. These are concrete realities. This is what's happened, and it did happen.
Yeah. I mean, I find it very strange. I remember my wife and myself, we went to the funeral of John Paul II, and just walking not too far from the Vatican and seeing the Masonic Hall, which is there. I mean, and it's not the only hall, the Masonic Hall you have around the Vatican. I found out there was another one, the other side. I mean, it's not like this is conspiracy to say that the Masoneria, they were beside the Vatican, they are influencing the Vatican. It's simple, observable fact. Yes. And we see even priests today that will say, look, I'm a member of the Freemasonry, and the church does nothing. They don't condemn them. They don't, they continue on. And so I suppose it's more open today now than it used to be.
Just recently, I read an article, I believe it was in Time magazine, I think, about an Austrian priest who works in the Roman Curia, who's one of the Pope's secretaries, who is a Freemason, and he's the chaplain to the Austrian Freemasonic Lodge. It's incredible. The Holy Father has no problem with this, evidently. Yeah. I have a problem with it, a tremendous problem with it, but he doesn't. So that's that. Yeah. But this is where we are today. It's amazing. It is amazing.
It's quite.
And I've got to say this too. It worked. What they've been doing has worked. It was very effective. It's worked tremendously well. Your churches in Ireland are practically empty. Our churches in the United States and Canada are dwindling like you can't believe. All over the world, they're suffering. They're suffering with the faith, because the faith hasn't been taught seriously in 3 generations. It has not been taught. Anyway, now I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. I mean, I just saw a mass leaflet. Somebody emailed me the leaflet of one of the masses here in Ireland. I'll do an episode later on it, where they say, well, look, since the reforms of Vatican II, we don't have the Eucharist at the center of our chapel anymore, and we don't kneel to the Eucharist anymore, because Christ is present when we gather to pray in the same way he's present in the Eucharist. I mean, and people read this and they think this is what they actually said in Vatican II, even saying it's not even in one of the documents to touch.
Of course.
I mean,
of course.
And this is what priests are writing, and you'd wonder what formation did they get when they say these things, that there's never been.
You know the formation they got. You know the formation.
I know.
Pathetic.
I know. I do think we're muffling the power of the Holy Spirit, the power of the gospel. We're muffling it in the church today. And I've said it many times, let the Holy Spirit out. If people are nourished by traditional Latin Mass, let it go, let it grow, let people come to it. And if they want the Novus Ordo, well, it's there as well. Let the Holy Spirit speak where he can in the church. But I've never seen in 30 years this level of of hatred for the traditional Latin Mass coming from Rome, and the tone of that documents. I've never seen a pope issue a document in that follow-up letter in that tone in 30 years. I find it quite amazing, on the highest form of prayer in the church. I don't know what when you saw that document, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, there's no question. I say the Tridentine Mass daily.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, if you would ask me or command me to go back to saying the Novus Ordo Mass, no, thank you. I found a real, as a priest, I found a real spirituality alive and well in that Mass. There's a communication and there's an intimacy between Jesus Christ and myself. There just is, that I wasn't feeling in the other performance. The Novus Ordo, if we're getting off a little bit, but the Novus Ordo to me became like a show.
Yeah.
You had to have something new at each Mass. Yeah. There had to be something new, a new performance, a new act. The Tridentine Mass, there's no need for anything. As a matter of fact, the priest is to lose himself in the Tridentine Mass. It's not about the priest. It's not about Father X and how funny he can tell a joke, or that if he can tap dance, but it doesn't. That's not it. It's about Jesus Christ being present with his community. I love the fact, you said it the other day, but my grandmother said it when I was a kid. I asked why we don't see the priest's face during Mass. When I was a boy, all of the Masses were ad orientem. There was no question about it. And my grandmother said, how would you like the bus driver to turn around and talk to us while we're going down Robert Avenue? Right? Got it. Anyway, there's a whole feeling, but my point is, it is to me astonishing the level of hatred for that Mass. Why? Why would you hate something that's 17, perhaps 18, perhaps even 1900 years old?
Yeah.
Why would you hate it? Why would you hate it? It fostered and helped create saints. This was their spiritual warehouse, was the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Why would you hate it? There's something wrong. You're too young to remember this, but there was a Mexican bishop by the name of Méndez Arceo. Méndez Arceo was bishop of Cuernavaca, Mexico. Méndez Arceo was a Marxist and very proud of it. A very good friend of Fidel Castro's. Right? Incredible, just absolutely incredible. But I had a conversation with him in Rome, and we were talking, and he said to me, you know, I find it very disturbing that such a young man as you would hold such conservative convictions. And I said, well, Your Excellency, imagine my surprise meeting such an old man as yourself with such liberal ones. Yeah. What is the matter with these people? What really shows you that there's something really wrong is the degree of hatred for the sacred. I find this phenomenal, just phenomenal. How else do you explain it except to introduce the diabolical? How else do you explain it? I'm serious. Yeah. Anyway.
In your book, you do talk about Archbishop Annibale Bugnini, the architect of the new Mass, and I believe you expand a bit there on this famous briefcase that was found that got him sent to the massive Catholic population of Iran. Do you think that, and this is the question I was thinking about for this interview, do you think him being a member of the Freemasonry, do you think those principles impacted in the Novus Ordo? Because it would explain.
Without a doubt. It's, yes, absolutely. The principles are there. You know, look, I have a lot of Protestant friends. I've dealt with Protestants all my life. Some of them are fine, fine, wonderful people. Some are not. The same I find with Catholics. Some are marvelous people. Some are really not. All right. However, when you're talking about Protestant theology, we're coming from two different places. Their dislike of the Mass. Now, notice I use the word dislike of the Mass. Only the Catholic hierarchy hates the Mass. The Protestants dislike it. Only we can hate it. This is amazing. But anyway, their dislike of the Mass is because it doesn't go according to what they want. What do they want? They want a supper. They want a meal. They want a convivencia. They want to get together. Let's hold hands, sing kumbaya, la, la, la. This is it. Well, if you want that, you have it. It's called Protestantism. And you can pick your flavor. There are over 30,000 different sects of Protestants. Can you imagine having such an array of possible beliefs? It's amazing. 30,000? Amazing. Anyway, no. That's not enough. We also have to become a Protestant church. There's no need to invent it. It already exists. Yeah. Annibale Bugnini he got a foot in the door under Pope Pius XII. He did not too much. He was quiet. When John the 23rd, and when I say he got a foot in the door, he was in the Sacred Congregation for Divine Rites, Culto Divino, and Sacraments. For worship, we call it. I think it's a congregation for worship. Yeah. Anyway, he got in there and was a member, and was a quiet member. He behaved himself. And then when John the 23rd was elected Pope after the death of Pius XII, John the 23rd knew something about Bugnini, because he expelled him from the Vatican. Not only expelled him from the Vatican, he picked up the phone and expelled him from the Lateran University, from his teaching post, and told the rector of the Lateran University, San Giovanni Laterano, that Bugnini was not to step foot in the university again. John the 23rd died, I believe it was 63. Yeah. Paul VI was named Pope, but Montini was named Pope. And Montini reinvited Bugnini right back to where he was. And it was from there that the chaos began. When Bugnini realized that he had the support of the new Pope, Pope Paul VI, he went to town. He did everything that he could do, and very duplicitous, very dishonest, a very dishonest man. The people who worked with him, Father Louis Bouillet wrote a book. Father Louis Bouillet was a Protestant, I believe, a Protestant minister who became a Catholic. He was Lutheran, I believe, became a Catholic, intellectually became a Catholic. It's a brilliant man. I saw him speaking one time in San Francisco. Brilliant. He worked with Bugnini, and he called him one of the most dishonest people that he'd ever had to deal with, right? Bugnini would tell one thing to the committee studying the reform and another thing to the Pope, and vice versa. It was terrible. Anyway, what happened was this. I don't know about the briefcase and a lost briefcase thing. That I don't know, because I never heard that. I'll tell you what I do know, and I know this from this. I know it this way. Two cardinals, first one and then a second. The first cardinal's name was Staffa, Dino Staffa, Staffa, who was the head of the Supreme Court for the Catholic Church in Rome, the Supreme Justice, Chief Justice, we would call him in America, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. No slouch, an intellectual powerhouse, and a man who knew canon law inside and out and moral theology very well. He was approached, I don't know by whom, but he was approached with documentation that proved that Bugnini was a Freemason. Cardinal Staffa, before he did anything else, contacted the Interpol and other private investigative bodies in Europe and had it investigated, had the accusation investigated. The documentation, was this legitimate? Is this real? Is it counterfeit? What? No, it was real. It was real. It was his membership in the Masonic Lodge of Italy, the Grand Orient, I believe it was. Anyway, when he was absolutely convinced of this, he sought out another cardinal, also a very sharp man with a good mind, Cardinal Oddi, shared this with him and wanted his input on it. Well, they both came to the same conclusion that this was real, and they had all of the documentation in the world that they needed. With that, they went to go see the Pope, Pope Paul VI. This is in I believe at the end of 1974, right? They presented the Pope with this documentation. This upset the Pope very much. Just getting off into a little bit of a tangent here, Pope Paul VI was not an evil man. He really was not. He was a good man, and I really believe that he believed that this reform was necessary, that some things had to change and to be updated, and some things did have to change and be updated. There's no question of that, right? I believe he was motivated. His motivation was authentic, it was good, and it was for the good of the church. When he found out who was heading this, and that he was a Freemason, the only way that he found to get rid of Bugnini was to promote and eliminate. And the elimination was a promotion to Iran, to Persia, with a population of 20 to 30,000 Catholics in the entire country, a parish, where he didn't speak the language. He wasn't a diplomat, and all he had to do was sit home and eat tea, drink tea or something. That's it. And falafels, whatever. That was it. So he was exiled. This was a major blow to him, to his ego. But it was very healthy for the church, because finally the Pope woke up.
Yeah.
Finally he got it. He got it. So if you remember, and your listeners will remember too, in 1973, just a couple of years before this, Pope Paul was already coming to the conclusion himself that there was something wrong. Something was amiss with the church. There was something wrong. When he talked famously of the smoke of Satan having penetrated some fissure in the wall and is now entering the sanctuary. That's quite a statement. And everybody who heard that at the time was taken aback. He knew what he was talking about. There were already these rumors. But in 1974, 1975, they were established, and he moved swiftly. And the man behind that moving swiftly was Archbishop Benelli, who was the Undersecretary of State. And the Pope was so distraught and upset by the whole matter, he asked Benelli what should be done. Because if this is one case that they found out, might there be more? Well, of course there was more. Of course there was more. It's like finding one cancerous cell. Do you think there might be another? Well, yes, you can be sure, right? In a tumor, yes. So Benelli sat down with the Pope, and they were very close. They were good friends. They had been friends for decades. They trusted each other. Benelli was a strong man. The Pope, Paul VI, was not a strong man. He was weak in the sense of he'll give you the benefit of the doubt and let's all get along and that kind of thing. Benelli wasn't. Benelli was a man of action and determination. And Benelli said to the Pope, well, if you want a resolution of this, have an investigation of the entire Roman Curia. How about that? How do you like that? The Pope thought about it and he said, an investigation of the Roman Curia, the entire Roman Curia. He said, yes, you're looking for it. Is there another cancer cell? Well, why wouldn't you investigate where the tumor is? Yes, the Roman Curia. And the Pope said to him, as if he didn't already know, he said, and Giovanni, do you have anyone in mind to head the investigation? And Benelli said, in fact, I do, Holy Father. And he suggested Edward Gagnon, who at that time was an archbishop, Canadian archbishop from Montreal. He had just been named head of the, rector of the Pontifical Canadian College.
And so you were just talking about Cardinal Gagnon being charged with that mission of the investigating the Curia.
Cardinal Gagnon was, at that time, he had just been named rector of the Pontifical Canadian College in Rome. And he had come from Columbia, where he had been teaching for years, doctorate in canon law, doctorate in, I believe, moral theology. One sharp man, and incredibly humble. And I would say it, and I say this sure of what I'm saying, a real saint, a saint. We keep talking about the Roman Curia and the problems with the Vatican and these evil men who are running around, and there are evil men, because where the vicar of Christ on earth is most present, and the presence of God so shining as in the Vatican, in the vicar of Christ, you can be sure that the devil is very near too, right? That just makes sense. Anyway, Gagnon was a saint, and a very practical and intelligent one, not a pushover. So Benelli suggested him to be the visitor, the apostolic visitor for the visitation or the inquisition, in the proper sense of the word, on the Roman Curia. Gagnon accepted. And he spent the next 3 years investigating every single person who worked in the Vatican. 3 years. At one point in time, and I've told this on other programs, he started getting death threats. His rooms, both at the Canadian College and in Trastevere, his office, were broken into and ransacked. Parts of the files, some of the files were stolen. At one time, at the very end of the entire study, he turned in the file, it was a 3-part report to the Pope, and it was put into a safe, I mean, a super duper safe in the Vatican. That safe was broken into and the entire file was stolen, right? Because people wanted it for blackmailing purposes, because it contained all of the information. Anyway, Gagnon did his study of everything that was happening in the Vatican, of everyone in the Vatican also. And he gave the report that, yes, it was a good thing to have gotten rid of Bugnini, because yes, the accusations were in fact true. Also, he insisted to the Pope that he immediately get rid of Cardinal Baggio in the Congregation for Bishops. That this was an absolute, it was abhorrent what was happening. Paul VI, and I know this, how do I know this? Because I drove Gagnon, I helped him with some of the filing, but I also drove him to his audience with the Pope and waited for him and drove him back home. So I knew what he was going to tell him, and I knew what he was told. The Pope Paul VI, when he listened to all of this, he didn't deny any of it. He realized that it was true. Sadly, it was true. But Gagnon told me this. He said, and I said, and then the Pope is going to act. He's going to act, because to get Paul VI to act, to do something, was very difficult, was very difficult. At the end of the audience, the Pope pushed the entire study back to Gagnon and said, I can't deal with this. Bring it to my successor. Bring it to my successor. I just can't deal with it. I can't. Gagnon said he didn't know what to do, how to react. When you've got an old man telling you, pushing this back, saying, I know what you're saying, and there it is. And well, he also, I think, knew, I would imagine, that he was going to die shortly. And in fact, he did. He died 2 months later on August 6th, 1978.
Gosh.
I'm not going to get into the minutia of the conclave that elected John Paul I, but we had a pope who was, there was a terrible conflict in the conclave, in the election for the new pope, between Baggio, Cardinal Siri of Genoa, and Cardinal Benelli, now of Florence. And it was Benelli, who I use the term, the magician's term, pulled a rabbit out of his hat, who was John Paul I, who was Albino Luciani, as the compromise candidate. And Luciani was also a very good, pious, intelligent, and holy man, personally holy. In all the makings of a great pope. He asked Cardinal Benelli of Florence, who was his friend, and who in some real sense got him elected pope. He took the name John Paul I. Remember the smiling pope? He was called the smiling pope because he was just a beautiful man, Anyway, and very simple. He asked Cardinal Benelli of Florence to leave Florence and to come back to the Vatican to become his Secretary of State. I liken that to Pope Pius X. Pope Pius X, when he was elected. Oh, by the way, your viewers who are thinking that a lot of this is plot theory and everything else, they should go back and look at the election of Pope Pius X.
Yeah.
Pope Pius X was not the first man elected. There was another man elected who was vetoed because he was a Freemason. Okay. Anyway, that's how Pius X was elected. When Pius X was elected, he was he referred to himself as a farmer, contadino. And I've said this in other things. He said more than one occasion that he still had dirt under his fingernails from working the land. And he was a good man, a very good man. But he realized his own limitations. And when he realized his own limitations, he called in the sharpest man around, Ralph Meri del Val, to become his Secretary of State. And between the two of them, they did a reform of the Catholic Church like nobody's business. They identified modernism and attacked with all the weight, spiritual weight they had to clean up the church. Unfortunately, they didn't finish it in time. It remained, it went underground, and remained there for the longest time until today. It's absolutely superior and reigning. However, John Paul I knew that he needed a Ralph Meri del Val. He needed an intellect and a strong man, and he asked Benelli to be his Secretary of State. At the same time, the Secretary of State was still there, and that was Jean Villot. And he was not a good person. Let me just put it that way, not a good person. He was a Frenchman, very, very arrogant, very, anyway, we'll leave that to God. He's with God. God will figure that one out. But John Paul I asked Benelli to be his Secretary of State, and Benelli accepted under one condition. He had to tackle, the Pope, the new Pope, had to tackle the situation, the problem with Baggio immediately on his own. And of course, this is a Pope who's shy, who's very reserved and everything. He said, well, you could come and we could, he said, no. You have to do this, Holy Father. You have to do it. He said, you do that, and I'm your Secretary of State. But that's one thing that you've got to tackle right off. He said, well, what should I do? And he said, Benelli suggested, he said, well, look, you've got the perfect opportunity. Rather than cause a scandal, you have to remember all of these things, all of these people are diplomats. Nobody really gets fired. They're not humiliated in public. Yeah. They're just promoted to here. It's like the Peter Principle. You're too young to know that book too. But the Peter Principle of everyone rising to his greatest level of incompetence. Anyway, you're promoted out of existence. So he said, Holy Father, Venice is open. Venice, you were the Archbishop, Patriarch of Venice. Venice is now free. Name Baggio to Venice. And you've got people in Venice who loved you and still love you and are close to you. They'll keep an eye on him for you. And you'll know exactly what he's doing and what he's up to. And he's controlled. Well, that was going to be the plan. And the Pope called, if you can imagine this scenario, this is true. The Pope called Cardinal Baggio, Sebastian Baggio, the Freemason in charge of bishops, called him to a meeting, wanted to meet with him. Baggio told the Pope, if you can imagine, I'm busy.
Oh.
So can't make it, busy, full schedule, sorry. He said, well, this afternoon then. I said, no, still busy in the afternoon. This evening, I want to see you today, before the end of the day. Well, he had no alternative. And he showed up at the the Apostolic Palace, the papal apartment, at 8:00 p.m. You've never heard of a papal audience at 8:00 p.m. This was a papal audience at 8:00 p.m. Baggio entered, and an argument ensued, a very loud one, with Baggio screaming, yelling, attested by the Swiss guards who were standing guard at the door. What he said, I don't know, but the loud voice screaming and carrying on. This went on for over 45 minutes, almost an hour. Baggio left with a slam of the door, left. He was the last person to see the Holy Father alive. The Pope died just a couple of hours later of a heart attack. There are many ways of killing people. Mm. And one of them is that way, is to cause a heart attack, is to cause frustration. You know that. There are many ways of killing people. You don't have to just take a dagger and stick a dagger in someone's back. There are other ways of killing, and Baggio did this. All of a sudden, we have another conclave. Benelli is there again, knowing exactly what happened and knowing who Baggio was and knowing what happened. Baggio is still presenting himself as a major candidate. You got to remember something else too. He was the head of the Congregation for Bishops. What does that do in a conclave, in an election with cardinals present? All of the cardinals from around the world, from Africa, from Asia, from here, from there, the periphery, arrived in Rome. They didn't know anybody but Baggio. I mean, Baggio was the man who made them bishops, who made them archbishops to places that ensured that they were going to be made cardinals. So yes, indirectly, he was responsible for them becoming cardinals. They came to Rome. The person they know best is Cardinal Baggio.
Yeah.
Right? Well, he thought he had another real chance of becoming elected. At that, Benelli pulled another rabbit out of his hat. That was Karl Wojtyła.
Mhm.
Benelli, when Benelli saw, Benelli was short only a few votes to be elected Pope himself. But Siri and Baggio, both for different reasons, because Cardinal Siri was a magnificent man, would have made a fantastic Pope, and should have been. Anyway, he was Pius XII's choice. If Pius XII could choose a Pope, it would have been Joseph Siri. It would have been. Anyway, I know that from Mother Pasqualina. But Benelli took another candidate from his hat, pulled him from his hat, a Pole by the name of Karl Wojtyła. And he accepted, and that was that. We get into another problem with Wojtyła. Great man, pious man. I'm sure he's in heaven. I have no problem with that at all. Did he take care of business at home? Absolutely not.
No.
He did not. He made trips. And I'm sure that he was convinced that that was his mission in life as Pope, to get out, to be with people, to meet with people on that level. He was a personalist and a phenomenologist.
Yes.
In that sense, and a convinced one. And I know that he believed that this was what he was meant to do, and he did it beautifully. But he became like a rock star. And you can imagine that every time he announced a new trip, everyone in the Roman Curia applauded. Of course, yes, Holy Father, another trip by all means, leave, go, right? And all of those trips cost months of preparation. People don't realize that. He had to know who the clergy were, the geography of the place, the history of the place, prepared to speak different languages that he didn't know, because he delivered speeches and all of this preparation. We had for all practical purposes, there was no one really at the helm. And the man who was there for the longest while was Below died of cancer. And then Casaroli took his place. He was second in command. So you had skullduggery all over the place, and they were running wild. They were free to do whatever they wanted to in the Vatican. This is a problem, a great problem. And Baggio remained as head of the Congregation for the Bishops. Right? And this is just going on and on and on and on. You know the problems that not taking care of business caused. I don't have to tell you that. You know that very well. By not looking at problems that were evident and there, by just traveling and going outside this. Yeah. You're not taking care of what you're supposed to. When the cat's away, the mice will play.
Yeah.
Well, these were larger mice. These are called rats, right? They played all right. They played, and they were free to do as they wish, with a Pope who was convinced that he was doing the will of God.
Yeah.
So, not a good combination for the church in the long run, right? And I'm sure he brought many people closer to Christ. I hope so. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So, there you are.
Yes.
There you are, and there you have it.
So now our listeners definitely know who Benelli, Baggio, and Bugnini are, and we've teased it clearly out. We won't be making that mistake again. It's fascinating to see where we're going in this in the church, because you're from an era from the 1970s where, as Taylor Marshall puts it, it's the era of felt banners and guitars and wooden tables for altars, and let's rip out our altars and get rid of altar rails and all this, and we've kind of come from this. We have this Catholic emptiness now in our worship. In Ireland at Christmas, we saw dancers doing the Gloria running around the altar with the Archbishop, and people are just wondering, where did our Catholic identity go? Like, where did the mass go, or is it just going to race off into ultimate wokeness that will just disappear? And I mean, and people might say I'm exaggerating, but this actually did happen. It is actually happening. We could see the German bishops going off on their tangent. What do you think? What do you, looking back on your history and your experience in the Vatican and your experience with all of these personalities and these cardinals, what do you think you will see happening in the church in the next 10, 20 years?
Wow.
And
Wow.
I know I'm asking this question now because for historical reason, when people look back in this video, they'll be able to reflect on what you've said. And I know it's I'm tying it into your book, but I really want your reflection here, and it can be open ended. It can be anything you want to say.
Robert, let me do it this way. And I've said this an awful lot, many times, and you've heard it from other people too. To those who are worried, and all of us are worried. I'm worried too. Okay. I don't have the magic answers. I wish I did. Yeah. I'd give them to you. But for those of us who are worried, I can just say this. I've read to the end of the book, and at the end we win. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, that's very important to know. That's very important to know. At the end, we win. Right now, it's amazing the dictatorial nature of the man who runs the show today. Yeah. By naming what is it, 21 or 23 new cardinals, or 21, I think it was, and they're all of the same ilk. Yeah, he's made the church into his own image and likeness. It's amazing. It's amazing. Just in case there was some possibility of the Holy Spirit getting in, we've taken care of that. The next conclave is going to be just what he wants, and it's going to be a Francis II. That's what he thinks. But you see if I'm wrong here. Our God is first of all omnipotent. Yeah. He doesn't bend to the will of this one or that one, whether you be Pope or Emperor. When he wants something done, it gets done. And like Gideon in the Old Testament, remember? Yeah. He was to wage war against the enemy of Israel, and God said to Gideon, "Your army's too big." So what do you mean it's too big? We're less than the enemy. He said, no, it's too big. He said, get rid of half of the men. Get rid of half the men? Are you kidding? Get rid of half the men. Because if you win, many of your soldiers are going to think it was because of their prowess. It was because of their strength. And I don't want that. I want them to be sure it was me who won the battle for you, not you. And we got down, I think they got down to 300, didn't they? Yeah. He reduced it to 300. And then he said the most astounding thing. He said, "Oh, you've got 300 against 30,000. Some exaggeration. I should know scripture better. I should know these numbers, but I don't. I just remember the message of it. He said, take the 300 down to the river and watch them drink. The ones who lap up the water in their hands, that's your army. The ones who drink like dogs, the ones who drink like dogs, who lap up the water directly without cupping their hands, that's your army." Right? Amazing. Yeah. And they won. He said, I want you to make sure that you understand that victory was not coming from you. It was mine. And I want it to be obvious. Well, I think I may be very wrong. I've been wrong a couple times in life. But I think that by stacking the cardinalate, the College of Cardinals, and making this in his own image and likeness, and assuring the absolute outcome of it, that it's going to be this way, and we're going to be globalists, and we're going to be environmentally conscious, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and forgetting Christ, putting Christ on the other side. No, no, it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. I might not be around to see what happens, but I know at the end there's victory, and that victory belongs to Jesus Christ. And that's what's going to be doing it. What would I give as advice to people? And I've been asked that too. What do we do in the interim? What do we do now? Here's what you do now. And I take this from the Irish. I'm part Irish on my father's side. Gahan from County Mayo. God help us, right? Faith of our fathers. Faith of our fathers. Living in spite of dungeon, fire, and sword. We will be true to thee till death. You learn your faith. Learn your faith. Get a simple catechism of the Catholic Church. Teach it to your children. Learn it yourself. Hold on to that. Just as Ireland held on to the faith in a time where all masses were publicly were against the law, everything else, you're in the same sorts of times right now. Learn your faith and hold on to your faith. Your faith, your Catholic faith, comes to you from Jesus Christ and from the apostles. And what is true is true. Then, today, tomorrow, it's true. Do not get yourselves upset with Vatican politics, with interfighting and this, that, and the other thing. That's not what it's about. It is about Jesus Christ. It is about his church. It is about the true faith that doesn't change. Hold on to that. Hold on to that. You'll make it through the storm. That's what it's about. And maybe we lost track of that. Maybe we lost track of that for years. Maybe we did. I think to a great degree we did. Time to relearn it. And hold on to it. And you'll have, as Pope Benedict said perfectly logically, he said, you're going to have a smaller church, a much smaller church, but a holier church. And when I go around and travel and meet these families of young people, of husbands and wives who love one another, of children who are loving, who know their faith, it's marvelous. I see a new beginning. I see it. It's there. It's happening. You have to look for it. And even if you don't see it, take my word, it's there. It's happening. It's happening. And this is a point of frustration to the devil, like you can't believe. Just you can't believe. This is his horrible frustration. We have an old saying in Spanish that says, build a cathedral, and across the street from your cathedral building, the devil will pitch his tent. Right? That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly it. So you've got the devil in charge of an awful lot of things, but he's not in charge of the church. He's not in charge of the truth. He's certainly not in charge of Jesus Christ. That's not going to happen. So hold on to those things that are sure. And may I just say one last thing? First, and I'm talking to an Irishman. Imagine an American giving an Irishman this counsel. Develop your faith. Also develop a sense of humor. You have to. You have to. You have to. Don't take everything as the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. All right? It's not the end of the world. Hang on. Hang on. Be faithful to what you're supposed to do. That's it. Remember, Mother Teresa was asked, I think, by Time Magazine. I'm quoting Time Magazine an awful lot as if it were a big deal. It's only the secular mind that I think is represented by Time Magazine. But Time Magazine asked her, if you can imagine what a stupid question to ask such a saint. She said, the reporter said, Mother Teresa, to what do you ascribe your success? And Mother Teresa, without batting an eye, said, God didn't call me to be successful. I wasn't called to be successful. I was called to be faithful. If I'm faithful, I'm successful. My success is in my faithfulness. And that's exactly what I would tell you and your audience right now. Ours is in our faithfulness to God, to his real church, and to the real true Catholic faith. It has to be rediscovered. And when you rediscover it, I'm telling your audience this, and I mean it, when you rediscover the faith, what a treasury. What a treasury you will have opened the doors to. It's fantastic. It's magnificent.
Father, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've ordered your other book, the Godmother. So I haven't read that, so I'm not able to ask you questions on your second book. You said that they're not sequences, that you can read one.
No, let me just tell you this, Robert. The title is a little bit confusing. A lot of people take the Godmother as being some sort of a mafia reference.
Yeah.
It's
so
not.
does I.
Yeah, it's not. The Godmother refers to Mother Pascalina Lehrert, who was my godmother for ordination to priesthood. Yes. I asked her to be my godmother. She accepted, and she was my godmother. And for 8 years, we were very close friends. I visited her at least twice a month, sometimes more. And this book is, it's an interview with her. I recall exactly what she said about different things. Yes. And different people. And that's what I put down. I wanted to get it down before I die, before I go to God. I wanted these things recorded. I want them out there. One of the things too, if I may just quickly, and I promise to be quickly, I keep saying this is the last thing I'm going to say. Do you notice that about me? And it's never true. Anyway, one of the stories in the Godmother, they're vignettes, right? Yeah. One of the stories was I went to go visit her one time, and an Austrian couple had just been there to visit her. People she knew from years before. And they came with some sort of a brochure or a little pamphlet about Pope Paul having been kidnapped and an imposter put in his position in the Vatican, this, that, and the other thing. And she pulled this from her sleeve and she said, look at this. And I looked at her, I was bewildered. I said, Mother Pasqualina, you don't believe that. I mean, surely you don't believe this nonsense. She said, oh, of course not. Of course not, I don't believe it. She said, but I want you to see what's happening to the church. People are willing to believe that because they cannot believe what they're seeing.
Yes. Yes.
Right? They'd rather believe this. They're able to believe that than the reality they don't want to see. Anyway, that's where we're at today. But fear not.
Yes.
I'm telling you, fear not. I know who wins, and so do you.
Yeah. Well, Father, we've got 2 minutes left. And what I'm going to ask is I'm going to post this video end to end, and people are going to be able to leave their comments on, and we'll try and get you back. And I think you're giving great encouragement. Certainly, it's like a spiritual guidance here for me. It's a great encouragement personally. And it's something that we'll leave for our kids, for my kids that look back in this, and for the church. And I'm not depressed. I think it's a very exciting time personally. I'm very optimistic. Like, you can see the Holy Spirit working in so many people's lives. But I do think we need to also reflect and learn from people like you that are leaving your reflection and your love for the church for the next generation. And this is kind of vital that we have these spiritual fathers to help us, because that's what we need, Father. This is what's lacking in the church, is spiritual fatherhood. It's so sad.
Yeah.
If you want to leave with the final thought, we've like about 3 or 4 minutes. If you want to leave any final thought, Father.
I'll just say this, Robert. I was for years in working in San Francisco, and San Francisco has a heavily Asian population, actually Chinese. Amazing. They must be, I don't know, 35-40% of San Francisco is Chinese. Yeah. And many of them are first generations. Well, they have a saying that I thought was very interesting, and they say it frequently. And it is, may you live in interesting times. May you live in interesting times. Well, I say that to you, and I say that to your viewers, not may you. You are living in interesting times. These are marvelous times. Indeed. These are exciting times because God is not asleep. He knows exactly what's going on, and he's working in ways that neither you nor I know. Here, there, this, that, moving hearts, moving souls, it's amazing. And the right people are going to come along. Ci sarà sempre qualcuno con la soluzione. There will always be somebody with the answer, right? It'll happen. It'll happen. Just be patient and don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. And learn the faith and teach it to your children. Keep it going.
I will. Father, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to put links to your book below. I do think you're giving a great service to us, and people will have links to both books, and I will try and get you back on to talk about Mother Pasqualina later on. Once I've
Robert, you're a good man. You're a good man. You're a good man. And listen, what you're doing is very important. It's very important, because what you're doing is getting out the message, and you're giving hope to a lot of people who are lost.
Yes.
People are lost today. You're giving them hope, and you're saying, I know the way. Now, don't you love this about our Lord Jesus Christ? He didn't say, I know the way. I know the way. I can tell you how to get there. No, I am the way. I'm the way. It's fantastic. And you're pointing people to that direction. It's marvelous. God love you, kiddo.
Thank you. God bless, Father. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.